Good evening and welcome to the Township Committee meeting for the Township of Chatham on February 4th, 2016. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meeting Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 8th, 2016. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 8th, 2016. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 8th, 2016.
Thank you very much. Everyone please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Gallup is not here right now. Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sullivan? Mayor Ritter?
Here. And just make note that Kevin indicated that he had a prior commitment this evening. He couldn't make it, and Bob indicated he'll be arriving around 8 o'clock or so. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're going to be moving on to reports. This is going to be the second report given by Tom Chiccarone, our administrator. Actually, you know what? I guess we'll do individual reports first. So, Mike?
Okay, very good. I'd just like to announce that the Chatham Community Garden will be having its annual meeting on February 22nd coming up. This is the meeting that will be held at the Public Library at 7:30 p.m. And it kind of launches the looking ahead to the spring. We have some good tips on organic gardening. It's a good opportunity for people who don't have plots and who are thinking of gardening to come to a meeting and kind of get a flavor for what's involved. And all those who do have plots are invited to come as well and participate. So that's February 22nd at 7:30 p.m. at the library. That's it.
Thank you, Mike. Karen?
Well, we have a busy time around the township over the last couple of weeks. First of all, on behalf of Deputy Mayor Sullivan, he would like me to announce that Sunday, February 1st, the Historic Society is participating in 4 historic farms and estates of Chatham, a program by Patricia Wells, which will be here at the municipal building. That's Sunday, February 21st at 2 p.m. to learn about the 4 of the largest farms and estates in Chatham Township from 1870 to the mid-1900s. So that would be very informative for folks who have the history of Chatham Township as an interest. And also the Friends of Library of the Chathams will be collecting books, DVDs, CDs, etc. in good condition from January 4th to March 1st for the annual book sale on March 12th. So mark your calendars for March 12th, the annual book sale. And in the meantime, if you are looking to donate books, CDs, DVDs, etc., January 4th through March 1st, the Friends of the Library of the Chathams. Next, the Board of Health, in conjunction with our Madison Health Department, has been very busy. Our Madison Chatham Coalition for Drug-Free Communities is ready to submit their $125,000 grant application to drug-free communities. They've been working very hard on it for about the past year, so we look forward to that. May 18th is the submission deadline. Also, our joint Board of Health has been working with our senior center and our senior community to promote an age-friendly community, which we here in Chatham Township believe that we already are, but we are taking steps to advance that and, of course, to advance the knowledge of our many activities for seniors. We had the donors party this past weekend. Mayor Ritter was there to sign a pledge on behalf of Chatham Township. Other things going on with the senior center is save the date for June 3rd and 4th, which will be the garden tour. We are looking for one more beautiful garden if we have any volunteers out there. We right now, I believe, are at a half a dozen, and we'd love to round that up to 7 for the garden tour in June. Saturday at the center will be February 20th from noon to 5. It's an open house, and if anybody is out there wanting to visit and see what our seniors are up to, feel free to stop by. And last and certainly not least, Rich Young, how was your first snowfall of the season, huh? kind of a minor weather event. Our Department of DPW deserves a great deal of thanks for the wonderful work they did of a really dramatic snow event. We've gone without snow for most of the season, and then we ended up with a real dramatic event. The road crews were ready from the word go. They pre-treated the roads, which I think were highly effective, but it was really hard to stay ahead of a storm like that. So they were reporting for duty in the middle of the night and worked through the night and obviously the next day or two. They're continuing to field calls from residents regarding the mounds of snow that may still exist around the intersections, although the unseasonably warm temperatures have kind of mitigated that a bit. A real special thank you, in addition to Rich and all your road crew, goes out to Christy Tragno for her cheerfulness in handling calls from our residents. She has a spirit of helpfulness and good nature that I think gives everybody a feeling that your complaints, your recommendations, your cries for a little help are going definitely forwarded on to the right people. The mailboxes continue to be an issue. Please don't hesitate to call. If it's a county road, the county will make some reparation, and if it's a local road, of course, the township will. So thanks to Christy for her good cheer. Thanks to all the guys in DPW, and get ready for the next one, I understand. Rich reports that our snow coffers, our salt domes rather, are already back up to capacity, and we're ready to go. That's what I got, Your Honor.
Great, thank you very much. A couple of reports on our end. Communications Committee distributed the bi-monthly newsletter. Some good information in there. You can find that on the website. I encourage everyone to take a look at that. We continue to work on the redesign of the website itself. We will be getting together hopefully in the next week or so to discuss some of the initial findings and next steps. And Tom Salvis is coordinating a Q&A, perhaps a series of Q&As with Chief Henley, as he indicated last week, and we're moving forward on that end. The Colony Pool Advisory Committee met this past week. A very successful, productive meeting, I think. Agreed by all members in attendance there. Discussed some of the improvements we're hoping to make this next year, some feedback from what took place last year. We have an active social calendar this year planned, everything from an adult luau, a ladies' night, tween, DJ night, several float days. The band's going to return, so it's going to be a great season for Colony. And in the midst of talking about snow and cold weather, I think it's a nice respite to talk about Colony Pool and what a great time it'll be this summer. And of course, with that, we're going to have a marketing plan launching it sometime in the springtime. Public safety front, I just want to thank all the residents who took the effort and time to clear fire hydrants in light of the blizzard itself. I know the fire department greatly appreciates it, and I think all of our neighbors will appreciate it as well. If, God forbid, there's ever an incident, we want the firefighters spending time connecting the hoses rather than digging out the hydrants. As it relates to Delwood, that's been a topic of interest in this past couple of meetings. Officer Meade reports that he's going to be coordinating a meeting with the police department officials in the borough, so more to come on that in the future. And then again, I just want to echo the comments from Karen and everyone on the committee to Rich and his team for a fantastic job. When we got notice Sunday around 10:30 a.m. that you guys were ready to pack it up and ready to go home because the roads were clear and everything else, it just speaks to the efforts and hard work, and truly commend you for it all. So thank you very much, as always. Bob probably would have reported on this, but I'll step in for him. The Pilgrim Pipeline, the Municipal Pipeline Group is going to be meeting this Saturday. The coalition of various municipalities to talk about the pipeline and next steps and how to confront this and stop it, as it were. And then we're also going to be announcing, myself in conjunction with Chatham Borough Mayor Bruce Harris, there's a scholarship opportunity for residents of Chatham, sponsored by the League of Municipalities. It'll be posted online tomorrow. I encourage anyone in the high school years, juniors and seniors, to apply for this. It's a $1,000 scholarship applied toward college. So more to come on that in the future, or you'll see it on the line hopefully tomorrow. And with that, no other reports. We'll go to John.
Thank you, Mayor. Just reporting on the Wickham Woods drainage project. It is about 90% complete. The work was stopped due to the rain, due to the snow. He is watching the weather, and he anticipates starting up again shortly just to complete the drainage portion. There's also curb related to that contract, which he's going to probably wait till the spring, which is a better time to be doing that with pouring concrete. I have warned the contractor multiple times, do not just show up. We need to have at least a couple days notice so we can re-notice the residents so that where he's working on, where he's going to be working, we at least give the residents enough notice that we're not going to be blocking their driveway and such. So we'll just stay on top of them regarding the notifications. On the consent agenda, you'll see there's 2 contracts related to Wickham Woods. Both contracts are related to the subsequent paving of the roads that are being worked on. One is a contract for Tilcon, which will be doing milling and resurfacing, and then the second contract is for General Foundries, which is for castings. What we're doing when we're restoring the road is that we're going to be doing profile milling on the edge of the road so that we can maintain the existing transitions at the driveways and at the curb, but we are going to have a more pronounced crown deck because there is a very flat crown in the roadways, because what's critical with road construction is that you get the water to the curb line and then into the drainage structures as quickly as possible. We don't want standing water because that's the number one mechanism that deteriorates the road. So we have that contract on for tonight. We're just going to, once it's awarded, I'll just coordinate. We'll coordinate and get the castings in right away, but with the paving contractor, we'll just coordinate between the 2 contractors and have that done likely early summer, late spring.
For those who don't know, can you explain what the castings are?
It's just we have in the center of the road the manhole covers. What we do is we don't, essentially we just lift up the cover, and there's an insert that we can raise it by 2 inches. And so so now that because we're milling the edge of the road and we're cutting the edge of the road by 2 inches, but all the steel, the water, and the gas valves, all those have to be raised up because we're actually putting pavement on top of what's there. And so putting in the castings, it just raises those iron in the street so we can blend the pavement to accommodate that increasing of the crown.
Okay. And with that, I'll tell you that I gave you and you bad information this morning because I thought these were the catch basins.
Now, the catch basins, well, it's partially correct because the catch basins, the frames around the catch basins, we do not have to modify, but the actual heads we do change. So it does include the heads, but it's not the inserts on the, and bicycle safe grates also, we have to change some of them over. Those are included, yeah, that's
Okay, then I don't stand correct. I stand incomplete.
Those casings, how does that work? You put the casings and then you pave it afterwards, or what's
They go in before. They go in before you pave.
But what's a lag time between the casings are there? In other words, people are going to be driving over this?
Oh, we usually do it immediately.
Okay.
It's the day before. We usually put them in the day before, and then we paint them orange, and then we pave them in the morning.
Okay.
So we've done that on
You don't have a good picture of me yet. I'll bring you one.
Yeah, we coordinate with the DPW, and we just prep the roads the night before, and we get notifications out to the residents when they're on that street that when we're going to be paving, be careful, and so the notification does go out.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And just report on the Safe Routes to Schools grant. We just again to report that we did receive a grant opportunity with the DOT to have the design of the project paid for 100%. Initially, they set a limit on the design of $125,000, but the DOT subsequently came back and said if additional money is needed, they will cover the difference. And so they're covering 100% of that cost. I don't have a firm schedule to report. I do know that the deadline to award the contract is basically we're not going to be held to any deadlines. As long as we're in their program, we're working with the DOT's assigned consultant, we're going to just go through the process and get it done as quickly as possible. And so there is no time limit now that we have to be concerned about. Don't know the process, I'll be frank, is going a little slower than I anticipated, and there's just a long process to get the consultant on board, finalizing scopes, finalizing prices. Expectation is that construction is definitely not going to start until 2017. I just don't foresee that happening this year. That's all I have.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Quick question, John. I guess continuing on the Safe Routes to School and the whole Spring Street issue. We have 2 items on the agenda tonight to regarding no parking on Spring Street, and that will affect specifically the portion under the high tension wires there, and where a lot of parents are picking up their kids now. I stopped by on Wednesday and spoke to a number of the parents who were there, and the good news is that I think all the ones that I spoke to had gotten the word that there's a no parking ordinance in the works. So I think the word is getting out. I'm sure there's somebody out there who doesn't know, and we'll hear from them. Sure. But there was a concern raised about the timing of it all, that if we adopt the ordinance, the no parking ordinance now, and they're asking me the question, how does that play out? Does no parking happen immediately? And if so, if they are expected to park in the parking lots there right away, have we already done, or can we in that time frame do what needs to be done to make those parking lots be as efficient and functional as possible?
Well, the ordinance comes into effect once it's adopted, and so once it's published, and the appeal from the process. So it's a relatively short period of time that it's going to be made into law. We could certainly look at. I know from that area that we improved the parking lots, and there is a separation between the parking at the tennis courts and the parking associated with the Colony Pool. We can look at that area. I don't see a problem of perhaps putting some additional gravel just to stabilize that area, because I know right now that we didn't get a stand of grass in that area during the fall, and so that needs to be looked at and reseeded and just to stabilize that area, so if people are walking in that area, it's a stable area and it's safe.
Yeah, and if I may add, there is good, clean access from School Avenue into the main parking lot, which is where most of the spaces are under the high tension lines. The strip that is in front of the tennis courts, where you access off of Spring Street, the driveway that's basically a dual driveway into the lot across from the emergency squad, and at the end of the tennis courts, serves and goes into the single line parking lot. That entrance needs some maintenance and improvement. But anybody who wants to park in the main lot coming in off of School Avenue should not have a problem. I will admit there may be a problem then walking from that lot, because you have to go through that same area that's kind of in a state of disrepair. But Rich Young and I are going to go out there and take a look at that and see what we can do in the short term to make some improvements for people. In the meantime, until we get that done, the police are not going to go out and immediately start writing tickets. They're going to take a gentle approach, probably give some educational stuff, maybe some warnings. But we're certainly going to ask them not to strictly enforce it until it is easy for people to use.
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly seeing it probably under the worst conditions, right after heavy snowfall and in a torrential downpour on Wednesday, and it was clear that there was water collecting in low spots. There was water flowing.
I went there today after we spoke this morning, so I understand what the concern is, and Rich and I will get out there probably tomorrow.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I guess we'll move on. Any other reports?
If I could just say one more thing. Sure. I neglected to mention during our entire snowstorm event that our communication with JCP&L was really unequaled. We were receiving constant updates from them, not only for the public on their Twitter feed and their Facebook page, et cetera, but we had ample conference calls. I would say every several hours we were on the phone with all the high-level executives as well as people who were manning the road crews, et cetera. So if there were any, we were lucky enough to not experience the power outages that they did down the shore, but they actually had upwards of 130,000 people without power at one point, and they were able to keep the lines of communication open. So I really do applaud them, and also to let our residents know that we had an open line of communication with them throughout the entire duration of the storm.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
And I guess, Tom, before you begin, I just want to make one more announcement. I actually received a letter from a resident over on Dale Drive thanking Tom for his efforts in helping to clean up an adjacent yard to their property. So again, I just want to thank Tom for being responsive to this resident, as well as the DPW who did some work on the yard as well. And of course, it's a great example of, what our township is all about and what we're here to help. So, of course, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, encourage you to come to one of our meetings or shoot us an email, and we'll see what we can do to help. So, with that, I'll turn it over to Tom to talk about the next budget presentation here, and reminder to all residents that the last budget presentation is posted online as well. And if you want to know how your money is spent, please take a look and view it.
Thank you, Mayor. And this report will also be posted probably tomorrow. In addition, as we move along, all of the financial documents that are referenced here, the annual debt statement, the annual financial statement, those have both already been submitted to the webmaster for posting. If they didn't get up today, they'll probably get up tomorrow. When the budget is introduced on February the 25th, and the full budget will also be posted, along with the new document that was implemented last year, referred to as the user-friendly budget, which takes all of this information and puts it into one document. But for tonight, we're going to review what I'm referring to as background information. All of this is relevant to how we construct the budget. We reviewed the spending side of the budget last meeting, the appropriations. Tonight is more focused on the revenue side, and we start with the annual debt statement. This document, this is just one page. This is the front page of the annual debt statement. The entire debt statement with all of the tabs are available online. That's it. If it didn't get posted today, it'll be up tomorrow for anybody who wants to review it in more detail. The front page gives basically a summary. And what you see is that we have $16.8 million, obviously as I speak I'm going to round these numbers off, $16.8 million in debt that is related to the school, 9.9 million, basically really call it 10 million for sewer utility number 1, that's WPC 1, and the bulk of that is the $7 million loan project, loan and grant project that we just did. There is then $223,000 in debt that's related to WPC 2, and the total municipal debt of $11.9 million. When you add all of those together, it's a total of $27 million, but only 11.9 of that is attributed to the municipal as our direct responsibility. And you'll see on the next page our the past 3 years of our equalized real estate property values of $3.2 billion, $3.3 billion, almost $3.4 billion, and the average for the 3 years of $3,318,105,368. That yields, when you go back and take the $11.9 million in debt, represents 0.359% of the total. And I added a note at the bottom. That note does not actually appear on the official debt statement. I added it for informational purposes, that per NJSA 40A2-6, 3.5% is the limit, the amount of debt that we would be allowed to carry without having to get any special permission from the local finance board or anybody else, and that amount is $116 million. So obviously we are well within the range that is permitted. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay. This next slide tells the story of our surplus balance at the end of the year, going back to 2007 when we had 3.4 million. 2008 it declined to 3.1, 2009 to 2.8, 2.5, and now we start in 2011 with a steady increase to 2.7 million, 3 million, 3.8, 4.7, and at the end of 2015, $4,888,580. I would also point out, I like to bring this up, I don't show it here, but if you go back to the early part of this century, 2000, 2001, 2000 in particular, there was virtually no surplus. When I arrived here in 2000, The surplus that was available at the end of 1999 was essentially all used in the 2000 budget. There was literally, I think, about $20,000 left.
Wow.
So we've made a very steady, conservative, slow approach to managing the amount of surplus and using appropriate amounts in the budget to keep the tax rate stable. This next slide, for some reason, isn't fitting on the screen. Let's see if we can get it. All right. Well, anyway, this is where surplus comes from. How you regenerate the surplus that you use in the budget. And the first category is excess of anticipated revenue. So in miscellaneous revenues, we collected $194,000 more than what we anticipated as revenue in the 2015 budget. Delinquent taxes, we collected $102,000 more than what was anticipated as revenue. Now, that does not mean that we didn't know that there was more delinquent taxes. We actually had, I think, about $670,000 or $650,000 in outstanding delinquent taxes, but we did not anticipate collecting all of that. I think we anticipated $450, and we collected about $550. So that's where you see an excess of collections there, and that excess goes to replenish surplus. What you'll see when we get to this year's revenues is that because we had a really outstanding collection year in 2015, the amount of delinquent taxes that are still out there is now substantially less, and we will be anticipating less this year. So we'll get to that, as I said, in a little while. The current taxes where we anticipated the amount for local purposes, we collected $1.3 million in excess. That also goes to surplus. MRNA is what we refer to, that's miscellaneous revenues not anticipated. That's a variety of miscellaneous revenues that we collect. In some cases, we know we're going to collect it, but we don't bring it in as an anticipated revenue because they might be short-term things that don't have permanency, like the temporary leases that we have on the cell towers that are paying rent to us, but at some point those are going to go away. So we don't anticipate them as a revenue to avoid having a structural imbalance there. Unexpended balances of appropriation reserves. That's the amount of money that was appropriated in 2014 that was not spent, and at the end of 2015 lapses into surplus. I can also tell you that the number for 2015 will not be as high. The amount of unexpended appropriations in 2015 was not as high as it was in 14. And then there's some other minor credits that also go into making up the difference. So that basically is how you get from $4.7 million that we had at the end of 2014. We used 2.8 of that as a revenue, and then we replenished it with these items to get to this 4.8. Okay. This is all in the annual financial statement for anybody who, again, wants to go see that in more detail. This is a summary of the anticipated revenues. Okay, now again, not the MRNA, these are the actual anticipated revenues. So in total miscellaneous revenues, we anticipated $1.8 million. We realized just over $2 million. This is the receipts from delinquent taxes. I mentioned in the previous slide we had anticipated $475. We actually collected $577. The amount to be raised by taxes was $9.4. We collected $10.7, and the library tax of $1,016,000, and obviously we collected exactly that amount. This is a summary of the revenues proposed in the 2016 budget. And the surplus is anticipated, and I apologize that I've actually made a correction to this, but I guess I failed to save the corrected version on my flash drive. We're going to anticipate using $3,050,000 in surplus, or an increase of 250 over last year. Total miscellaneous revenues, this includes grants. That's 2,597,000, and you see a large increase there of 759. The important thing to remember here is that grants do not impact the amount to be raised by taxes or the tax rate. They are money in and offsetting appropriation. And the biggest chunk of this 759 is the Safe Routes to School grant that we received last year that we're now appropriating because we're going to spend it this year, as well as a $100,000 grant that we received to make the installation of the generator for this building a permanent installation. So although, again, you see a large increase here, that's mostly due to those two grants. Now, receipts from delinquent taxes, again, this is the other one that I changed after reviewing the annual financial statement and seeing that we had a decline in the receipts from delinquent taxes. So this is going to be reduced to 450, and you can see what I did. I took 50 from here and put it in surplus. So we're going to anticipate 450 from the receipts from delinquent taxes and 3,050,000 in surplus. And when we post it, I'll make sure that the correct version gets posted. So the amount to be raised for support of the municipal budget will be $8,438,915, and that represents an increase of $52,758. State aid is an estimated number. This is $836,467. That's the same that it's been for about the past 5 or 6 years. Until the governor actually presents his budget, we don't know what that number will be. My guess is it'll be the same. The library tax goes up 26,000 from the 1,015,000 to 1,041,000. This is state aid, tracking it back to 2007. 2007, I believe, was the peak year for us in the time that I've been here. We used to receive 1,256,000. It then started to be reduced in 2008, 2009, 2010. There was then a one-time increase in 2011, and it has been kept frozen at that level ever since. And as I said, I have not seen anything coming out of Trenton to suggest that it's going to go up or down. For our purposes today, I'm estimating it to stay the same. If it does change before we introduce the budget, then some other numbers will change with it. If it goes down, then the amount to be raised by taxes is either going to go up or you're going to use more surplus or something. If it is increased, the state typically would order us to reduce the amount to be raised by taxes so that you don't play games. They like to take credit for giving you state aid for property taxes. This is the municipal purpose tax rate. Again, this is the money that we collect to fund our operations, separate from the school and separate from the library and separate from the county. This does include the open space tax for comparative purposes. Back in 2007, that 28 cents included it, so that we're comparing apples and apples. I've added it in. The actual rate for 2016 is 0.272. So when you add in the 0.005 for the open space, that's how you get to the 277. And what you readily see is that if you go back to tracking from 2007, we had just the slightest tick up in 2008, another little tick up in 2009, a full penny in 2010. And if you match this against the surplus numbers where we were using less surplus and less surplus available, there's a direct correlation there. In 2011, we were able to bring in just a slight decrease, kept it the same in 2012, a little bit down in 2013, 2014, a little bit down, 2015, a full penny reduction, and this year, virtually the same as last year. It'll be a slight, 1/10 of a cent reduction. And the bottom line is that the rate in 2016 is less than the rate was in 2007. I think that's a testament to the way that we have conducted our fiscal affairs. We've taken a very conservative approach. We've managed our surplus, used it well to keep this rate level. So the bottom line is anybody who has a home that has not been revalued since 2007, if you haven't made improvements or done anything that led to an added assessment, your tax for your local purposes is the same in 2016 as it was in 2007, and actually slightly under that. Okay, so the only people that would have seen an increase in their taxes for local purposes would be people who have made renovations or additions or tore down a house and put up a new one. Any increase in the amount to be raised by taxes was all borne by those changes. This is the levy cap bank calculation, and I'm actually going to pull up the sheet from the levy cap workbook to go through this. But again, the quick answer here, a quick message here, is that every year since the levy cap, and this again for people who don't understand the terminology, the levy cap is a cap on how much taxes you can raise and bill your homeowners. The appropriations cap is a limit on spending. The levy cap is a limit on taxation. And since 2012, we had $585,000 in cap bank that now has expired, that's no longer available. 2013, which was available to be used through 2016, was $366,000. 2014 to be used in 16-17, $423,000. Last year, 2015, we were under $654,000, and this year's budget will be $471,000 below the levy cap. So when you add that all up, since 2012, when the levy cap was instituted, we are over $2.2 million below what we were allowed to levy per the state 2% levy cap. So we would have been able to bill an additional $2.2 million and still have been in compliance with the state's levy cap. These last few slides show you a comparison. You see school taxes in 2007 were $25.8 million. In 2015, it was $35.8 million. So you saw fairly substantial increases each year. I'm not making any editorial comment. This is just the facts. County taxes, you see a similar story, went from $7.3 million to $8.4. Over the last several years, the county has been able to keep their budget pretty flat, but one of the things that I've cautioned people about in the past when the county talks about having no increase is that doesn't necessarily translate into no increase for Chatham Township, because the county adopts a budget and an amount to be raised by taxes, and then it is apportioned out to the municipalities based upon your equalized values. So if our values are going up and other towns are staying flat or maybe even being reduced, then our portion of the county tax goes up. And that's why you see in 2013 it was increased by $300,000 over the prior year. In 2014, a couple $100,000. Last year was virtually unchanged. And I don't know what to expect yet this year. This takes those and puts them all on one sheet. So you see the school from 2007 to 2015, the county and the municipal. And you'll see, as far as the rates go, the school went from 92.8 cents up to $1.16, almost $1.17 in 2015. We went from, the county went from 2.66 up to 2.74. So as I said, they've been able to maintain a pretty flat rate over that same period of time. and we have gone from 28 cents to .277, virtually unchanged during that period of time, with a little bit of up and down in the middle. Okay, that's the end of this particular presentation. If anybody has any questions or you want to go back and discuss any of these in more detail.
Yeah, I just want to, again, just commend you, Tom, for doing these presentations. I think it's very helpful for the committee and certainly for our residents to understand that, the strong fiscal discipline that we adhere to here in the Township Committee, and always trying to use resident tax dollars wisely. You did have this summary levy cap calculation worksheet here, and I just want to point out one thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm
this is
misstating
it for so people can follow along.
Oh, there you got it. Good. Can we talk to the new ratables? We've got over 37.
Yes, Mayor. There is, I think some misperception that the added ratables, the fact that Chatham Township has been able to weather the economic storm and the housing crisis, and that we've seen added ratables each year, that's the reason that we've been able to do what we've been able to do. And it's frankly only a small part of the story. If you slide down to what would be starting at line 32. Let me just go through the whole thing. I think it would be better so that people can understand it. At the top, you see that the amount to be raised for taxes, by taxes for municipal purposes in 2015 was $8,386,000. When you apply the 2% levy cap increase to that, that's the amount that you're allowed to increase, the adjusted tax levy becomes $8,553,890. There are then some exceptions, some adjustments to that based on the levy cap law when it was adopted, that allows for some credit for increases in health insurance costs over and above a certain beginning point. Allowable pension obligation increase, and you see that here of $92,000. Allowable LOSAP, that's the length of service awards program that we have for the volunteer fire departments and emergency squad, and the annual allowable debt service, the increase in debt service. We also did a special emergency appropriation last year to fund work that needed to be done for the compliance with the fair share housing and the affordable housing issue. So those exclusions total $255,000. When you add those to the $8,500,000, you now come up to an adjusted levy after the adjustments of $8,808,000. This now is where we factor in the increase in ratables. We were fortunate enough in 2015 to have $37,231,000 in added ratables. Again, that is for new construction and additions to existing homes and other improvements, that added value of $37,231,000. When you apply the municipal tax rate to that of 0.272, what you wind up with is $101,000. That's what those new ratables yield, $101,000 out of $9 million. So it's nothing to sneeze at. It's certainly better than being in a negative position, but it is a relatively small benefit. It is not how we've been able to hold the line. We've held the line because we've held the line on spending. We have reduced the size of every department. We have made changes in the way that we insure ourselves for liability and workers' comp. We've made changes by joining the New Jersey State Health Benefits Plan. We've joined the New Jersey SEM for purchase of energy. We've done a lot of things that have led to permanent long-term savings. The reduction in personnel in particular is really the key. We have fewer police officers now than we did 15 years ago. We have fewer public works employees than we did 15 years ago. We certainly have fewer administrative staff than we did 15 years ago. And those things have been the major reason that we've been able to hold the line and maintain a steady fiscal position. Okay, and again, this levy cap workbook, this entire workbook will be posted on our website, and people can go through it at their leisure. The first page is the data entry sheet. This is basically where everything gets plugged in, and then the other various tabs self-calculate. So this was the levy cap calculation. This is a shared service worksheet. You'll see that there's one for the health insurance, so you see how that exclusion is calculated based on what the prior year expenditure was, what the current year expenditure is. And there's actually two different appropriation caps that have to be calculated, one from the 2010 and one going all the way back to 1977, which was the original cap law. There's the pension contribution calculation sheet. So I said all of these tabs, this is the LoSAP, these are all the ones that then are pulled forward into this sheet, which tells the whole story. Okay?
Great. Thank you, Tom. And again, commend you and the other departments for doing more with less over these years. And I think, this proposed budget reflects, again, the fiscal discipline of the township. And I think few municipalities, if any, can match to what we've been able to accomplish over the years. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Tom, I actually would ask that maybe you could give us a little bit, we talked about this before, about the importance or the latitude that it gives the township to carry a surplus on the books of some $4.8 million. I know that cash flow, obviously, you've got money coming in and money going out during the course of the fiscal year, and the importance of carrying a number like that on the books, if you'd be so kind.
Well, there's a variety of reasons. The main thing that we use it for really is to maintain a stable tax rate. We don't want to see, we don't want to, for lack of a better term, jerk people around where we're, manipulating the number and having a tax increase one year and a tax decrease the next, and spiking up and down. We've tried to keep it stable and level, and that's really the main reason. There's then, a bit of an art, and it's really at your discretion as to how much of the surplus you want to use. My recommendation here is to use $3,050,000 of the $4.8 million. You certainly could choose to use more. If, for example, you wanted to have a penny decrease like we did last year, you'd have to use about another $300,000 or $330,000 of that. What that then does, though, is it exposes us to the possibility in the future of not hitting our revenue goals. And the worst thing that could happen to us would be to anticipate certain collections and a certain rate. For our purposes, we use a collection rate of 97.2% of the levy. That is the number that's used to calculate the reserve for uncollected taxes. And there's nothing magical about that number. We could change that up or down a little bit if you wanted to adjust the reserve, and that then impacts how much surplus you're going to generate. The danger is that if you miss your target, if something happens in the economy and the economy tanks and for some reason people don't pay their taxes, you have a double whammy the following year, because you're going to have a deficit that you have to make up, and your reserve for uncollected taxes is going to go through the roof at the same time, and you're going to then see a very large tax increase in 1 year. So we try to manage it. We take a conservative approach to it. You certainly could use more. There are certainly people that you will probably run into, at sporting events or cocktail parties that will argue that we should use more, that money belongs to the taxpayers and that we should give it back to them. That's a policy decision for you to make. That argument can be made. But instead of you give it back today, it may very well be that next year you're taking it back in a tax increase. So, that's not the way that we've done it. We've tried to use a reasonable amount in order to maintain a stable tax base, a stable tax rate.
Thank you.
Mike?
No, I guess I would just, the headlines that strike me are, just as Karen said, we have $4.8 million in surplus, but balanced against that, we're taking the $3,050,000, and that's money that we don't have to raise by taxes this year. So I mean, that's a major plus for the tax rate right there. And I think what another way maybe to express that cap levy figure of over the last 5 years of 2.3 million, I guess, is the
Right.
total amount of the cap levy, is that's money that we have not taken out of taxpayers' pockets.
That's correct.
And basically, that's the direct result of the fiscal conservancy, conservatism that you just described, and that's so that even though being conservative is kind of people describe it and would define it differently. I mean, everybody's conservatism is a little bit one way or a little bit the other way, and I think that this is a balanced way to look at it, and it's certainly with those two numbers balancing against it, what we have saved and what we then each year can roll back over from the surplus to not have to.
And let me be clear, when I use the term conservative, I'm not using it in a political way. I'm talking about a safe, conservative approach to the way that we budget and the way that we manage our fiscal affairs.
Very good. No, very good.
Thank you, Tom. Well, I guess now we're going to open it up for the hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. And if you come forward, please just state your name for the record and where you live.
I'm looking for the sign-in sheet, like the Board of Ed meeting.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Amanda Feeman. I live on Shunpike Road, obviously in the township. I'm going to speak on 2 topics tonight, and I'll try to separate them because one is for safe routes to school and one is more as a resident. Do I get 6 minutes? 3 for safe routes to school and 3 for... I feel like I'm on the debate team in high school again with the 1-minute sign. With the 1-minute sign. It's not going to be, very amicable tonight. I think first I want to start with, I walked in very close to the commentary on the grant for Safe Routes to School. I think the one thing that I would ask, even though there was no deadline and they're not pushing us, one of the things that we had talked about was we like to do construction in the summer. So I don't think we were targeting doing that construction on Lafayette before 2017, at least from my notes. But, if we could keep working towards making sure it's happening within that summer time frame of 2017, so before the next school year starts, we get that up and running, I think that would be fantastic. The next thing with respect to Spring Street, I want to say thank you to Mike for going out in the pouring rain, because when I heard you were out that day, even I didn't run an errand in that rain that I was supposed to run because I didn't want to get out in the torrential downpour. I know that there's the ordinance in discussion for the 2 sides of the street ban. I have heard negative feedback from parents on that. I have heard from parents they're going back to J Road, which is exactly what I've heard you don't want them to do. So I don't know if it's because it's the winter months. I know that there was some commentary in this discussion that the school road portion was fine, which I specifically received comments from at least 3 parents this week that they weren't parking there because there was a rut on that particular section. I am fully admitting it's hearsay because I do not use that area of the street during the day. But when we're considering ordinances, I think, one of the things is we may need some more data from people. I know one of the things we're doing on Delwood that does seem to be working well is we communicated through the school. We ask, we're doing some enforcement, some communication. We are seeing some things that are working, some things that are not, because there were questions whether or not traffic was going to back up onto Fairview when we took one approach, and seeing if that happens, so we need to make some changes. So I know that we all want to fix this solution on Spring Street. And I do know that the question was asked tonight. I do want to make sure that whatever ordinance is going into place is taking into effect that there is going to be a sidewalk there, and what we want to do if we really want this parking ban on both sides when that sidewalk is in place. And I'm genuinely asking these questions tonight because I think we want to get it right, because I've also received a lot of negative chatter just all about town. So I'm kind of here tonight to say, I think as a town, pedestrian and traffic safety, it's a pretty big issue right now. There's Facebook chatter every day on every single site in town. We have people parking in handicap parking places. We have people talking on their cell phones. We have people parking in teacher parking places. And that tells me there's a lot of negative comments, talked about all of these things. It tells me the traffic pattern's overtaxed. It's not convenient for people to be driving their kids to school. And so parents are making bad choices. I don't think people in town genuinely want to teach their kids to park in a handicapped parking place when they're not supposed to. I don't think they want to be teaching them a lot of things they're teaching. I'm choosing to think the best of people. But it tells me we need to address this. And it comes to some of the other things that you've received emails from me about this week. And it goes right down to shoveling the snow so that people can walk to school. It goes down to, enforcing some of the laws that we already do have that are in place so that people can actually park in parking places when they do have a disability. But it's rising to a level, and I'm bringing it to your attention because I can only do so much. And I'm probably hearing a lot more of it than you ever would hear because I'm just a mom and it's just a place or I'm looking on some site that you're never going to go look on where people are just chattering. I'm probably well over my 3 minutes by now. I think with respect to the snow shoveling, I want to talk about that just a little bit because it brings me to two issues and it sort of rounds me back to the budget with the surplus. And I go into private resident land as well now. Living on Shunpike Road, the snow is pretty dangerous. And I stand up here and I advocate for lots of roads like Dellwood and Spring Street, and I live on one of the most dangerous roads in town. And during the snow, it's an even more dangerous road. And we don't have a sidewalk on my side of the street, and we don't have an ordinance for people to shovel snow. So I would happily shovel the snow. My neighbors would happily shovel their snow. We don't have a sidewalk. We're reliant on the people across the street to shovel their sidewalk, and unfortunately, in the past storm, there were about 5 houses that did not. So you have about 4 houses that do, 4 houses that don't, and there's a good 2 miles there, I would say, where people are walking to Washington Avenue, which sort of circles back to my other comment. That's adding probably, anywhere from 7 to 15 cars of people who wouldn't normally be in the Washington Avenue traffic pattern when they're driving plus snow, because their kids can't walk. So I think we need to address those issues so kids can come to and from safely to school. So I know that a snow ordinance has been talked about before at the township level. I know there's varying areas of town which have differing levels of degree of traffic safety, but I think in areas like Shunpike Road, where kids have to walk to school, and typically do walk to school on that stretch, we need to make sure, we need to have a way to make sure that that snow is cleared so they can walk. And their parents don't have to take off work, and they don't have to climb up on snow mounds, which I see them doing, and it's very, very unsafe. So those are some of the issues that I think we should tackle. As with respect to the surplus, I commend the fiscal responsibility. I don't want you to give me my money back. I do, however, want us to maximize the services that we provided the township with that money. And one of those would be, I think if we're not going to get a grant for a sidewalk on Shunpike Road, I think we need to consider whether we're going to build one, and quickly. I moved into my house and I sent an email to Safe Routes to School in 2013. And Tom, I think you were actually the person who responded back at that time to the Safe Routes to School person at that time. And Shunpike Road was second on the list for this sidewalk to get built. And it was a consideration when I bought my house. And I'm now in 2016, and my kids are going to be using this stretch. And we don't seem to have, we have loose plans for whether there's going to be a sidewalk on this stretch. So I think that's one of the things when we do have a surplus, I think we have to think long and hard about whether we use some of our own money to do this if we can't get a grant and if we can't get it done expeditiously. I also think other services that I lost when I moved from the borough to the township were recycling. Also another issue that comes into play in a snowstorm. Because when we have recycling every 2 weeks and we have a big snowstorm like we did, and my husband's traveling and I miss recycling, I start throwing garbage in the trash, which is something that I never had to do in the borough because it came every week and it was very easy to do. So I think those are some of the things that I would like to encourage you to consider, which would just make it an even better place to live. Because I think, I commended you, and I'll say it on the record here, with respect to what Public Works did during the snowstorm. I mean, it gets cleaned up fast. I mean, I came from Louisiana, I came from Washington. The fact that we only missed one day of school, and it was even questionable whether we really needed that one day, that's pretty amazing ability to move snow. So I think all of those things we're doing very, very well. I think we need to turn and look at some of the things from the residential focus to maximize some of those services that would make our individual lives a little bit easier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. We've got a couple of ordinances. These are, there's 5 of them. These are the ones we were introduced last week. The first ordinance, Ordinance 2016-01, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 6 of the Township Code to amend the annual renewal fee for liquor licenses. Is there any discussion on this one? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Oh, public, okay. Does anyone want to come up to the microphone and discuss this? All right, seeing no one?
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Our next ordinance is Ordinance 2016-02. It's an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing acceptance of a conservation easement from Susan Drive, Inc. for Block 20, Lot 1735 Susan Drive. Is there any discussion on this? We discussion first, and then we can open it up? All right, public hearing. Anyone have anything to say on this one? Anyone in the committee? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Next ordinance is Ordinance 2016-03, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to exceed the municipal budget appropriations limited to establish a cap bank. NJSA 40A:4-45.14. Open up for a public hearing. Any discussion from the committee? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Ordinance 2016-06, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Section 7-10 of the revised general ordinances of the Township titled Stopping or Standing Prohibited During Certain Hours on Certain Streets on Spring Street. Open this up for the hearing of citizens.
Mayor, I will quick note that in Section 2, earlier today, Mrs. Schwartz noted a typographical error. The original copy showed Section 7-14. It should be 7-10, and since it's just a typographical error, it was non-substantive. The version you have tonight reflects that change.
Good, thank you.
Hi, Amanda Feeman. I don't exactly know what the protocol is. Can I ask questions? Mike, when you got feedback from the people on Spring Street yesterday, were they generally okay with the two sides, with the double side of the street parking, or what type of information were you given when you were there?
Sure. It was a very much of a spot check kind of a conversational poll, and hardly a poll at all, but probably a half dozen mothers. All of them said that they understood it. Some said that they thought that maybe one side might have accomplished it, but that they could understand in the interest of safety that making it no parking on both sides of Spring Street was acceptable to them. And then I guess all of them pretty much went on to voice some level of suggestions that we time it so that as we put people into the parking lot, that the parking lot be improved so that it functions more effectively. And they had different concerns about potholes sticking down, some rocks sticking up, different things like that.
So the feedback that you got was more related to the quality of the parking lot
Yeah.
than necessarily whether
Well,
it was the street parking.
I would say that all of them, I started out asking about whether they had heard about the no parking
Right.
that was about to be enacted, and all of them had heard it. So that was a reassuring piece of news that the communication was getting out. All of them were understanding of the need for it, that it was not a safe situation now. Some of them did say that they thought that maybe no parking on one side might have brought it into a safe enough situation, but all of them continued on that thought and said both sides was certainly safer, and they could understand us looking for that as the ultimate goal. So it really was a multi-part question, and it addressed both the no parking on Spring Street and the condition of the parking area.
Right. I think the piece of the equation that I don't fully have, because the pool we have is from the people who are still parking there, is how many people have redirected off of Spring now that it's the double parking because it's become too inconvenient, or the parking lot is, and I'm sort of having like an open dialogue back and forth for you, because I think I'm getting feedback in the emails that the one side of the street parking is strongly preferred. So I wanted to understand what Mike heard when he was out in the field, specifically talking to his parents. I do know that I do continue to hear a lot of the feedback about the quality of the parking lot. So I think that's something that you guys have to weigh in balancing the needs in what needs to be addressed from an overall town perspective, a school perspective, because I don't want to create something when the whole reason for this parking lot was to redirect the traffic into this pattern away from the school. We don't want people going back to J Road, and it is one of those questions that I have, like Delwood, because we're taking sort of a step approach on Delwood. Is one side enough? And then if it's not solving the problems, then do we go harder to, two-sided the street parking? That's where, I think we all agree something needs to be done. You've heard now what I've heard. Yep. And you need to just you need to weigh it.
Yep.
You need to weigh it. I think that the clear message that both Mike and I have heard from people is, we have to, if we're going to put people in that parking lot, we have to maintain it at a level that people are willing to park there and make it as easy as possible for them to do so.
I don't know if you were here earlier, Amanda, but John did address that, and so did Tom, that we are going to look at the parking lot there and see what we can do to add more gravel,
I did
fix it up a little bit as well. But as it relates to your comments, that all you're hearing is negative. I have a daughter who's at Southern Boulevard, and 3 of my kids went to Southern Boulevard, and I've got many friends who are at Southern Boulevard still as parents. And I've heard nothing but positive responses regarding this ordinance. And it goes to the point of, what is enough? Right? We talk about sidewalk safety, and you install sidewalks to err on the side of caution. I think doing the double, preventing the parking on both sides of the street, is it overly conservative? Sure. But God forbid we do it on one side and some kid comes running out and gets hit by a car. Then what? We're going to think to ourselves, we should have done it. And I don't want to think that way.
No, and
let me finish. You talk about these websites and people on these forums, blasting and saying negative things. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to those websites. If you ask the people who own those websites and manage those websites, perhaps you can see how we can get on those websites to hear this commentary. I've been an advocate of telling residents if they have something to say, please come to our meetings, email us, speak up. We want to hear this. You have those copies of those emails and things, please forward them to me. I want to hear them. We all want to hear them. That's what it's all about. We're here to be responsive to our citizens. But being excluded from websites and forums for whatever reason, it's not a way of doing it. And I just want to reiterate, I'm fully supportive of this ordinance. I've heard from parents who've expressed their concerns of safety of their children at this crosswalk. And I say again, God forbid something happens, then we're down the road, because we pull back the strength of this ordinance, I couldn't sleep at night.
I'd also like to say, with all due respect, and to echo Mayor Ritter's sentiment, Facebook pages in our township are great. In our society, they're great. They help us keep up with the goings-on in our communities, our families, etc. But that should not be the avenue of communication, of dissatisfaction of municipal services, unless people are just interested in an echo chamber, and I don't think that's what the residents really want, unless they really do just want the echo chamber. Because, as Mayor Ritter said, there are Facebook pages that we've been denied access to. There are other things to do during the day than spend time immersed in the dialogue of that. When we're here during certain periods of time, we have a communications portal on the township website. We do maintain a township Facebook page, a township Twitter feed, etc., so that the residents can communicate directly with us. And I think if you're sitting reading the computer and hearing all of this negative feedback, it's kind of almost counterproductive that they're not coming forward.
And let me clarify, because the Facebook page, I can forward, I think it's on Chatham Community Forum. It's not a closed.
It's an exclusive site.
The Chatham Community Forum?
The government updates, I believe it's called government updates.
Okay, well, the site was generally, the chatter came about, literally, I read the comment, the comments related to Spring Street are not going on Facebook. They're emails that I got from people who are talking about the particular issue. And I'm genuinely, I appreciate it. I am asking the questions here because I want to hear what Mike has to say. And I am merely expressing from people who came to me. I am always going to hear more negative feedback than you do, because
that's not necessarily true.
Okay, I think I'm going to get, and when I'm saying to you things that I'm looking to from like Facebook pages, I am not looking for any specific issues. It's that there's generally this particular week on things that I'm not even looking for traffic safety issues. There's just a comment on the rise of concern, which you would expect because we had snow on the ground.
Sure.
And so all of the grievances that people have sort of bubble to the surface. And if there are real issues, then I do channel people to write you a letter, which you received from a resident this week. And I do it in a very constructive, I hope you feel, in a very constructive fashion.
I think we're all appreciative of that. And again,
and
any way you can get the message out for people to do that, I appreciate it, and I encourage you to continue to do so. My point was, if I continue for one moment here, is when you were talking earlier, all I kept hearing were these negative comments. And I just wanted to express to you and to others out there listening to this and listening to the replay, is I've heard just the opposite. I've heard very positive things. I've heard people expressing gratitude of thanks for us taking the initiative to do this. So I want people to understand that there's a balance. Sure, there's always going to be negative, but in this case, there's been a tremendous amount of positive commentary and support for this ordinance.
And I asked the question the way that I did, so that if there is that, when Mike heard it from the other side, I wanted that to be as presented in this meeting.
Exactly.
And that's genuinely what I wanted, to express, because I think one of the things is, you're hearing the side that the double side of the street parking, is necessary and it is appreciated. If that is what people are going to, if we're going to do it and it's going to make things safer because people are going to actually still park there and use it and follow what our objectives were, then by all means, that is the right thing to do. And I want the safest thing, which is why I advocate for sidewalks and not for crosswalks. So I'm not going against that. I was genuinely opening the discussion to, do we feel that the one side is enough, and what have we heard? Because, you know, there seems to be, you know, because I don't get all the information. So I mean, you have what I know.
Yep.
So unless you have any questions for me,
Great.
I've heard, and I do really appreciate Mike going out there yesterday, because I think you're going to get the real story in the rain like that.
Thank you.
Kurt, you know, I think we've all, at various times, have gone over there and seen it, and I think I'm speaking for all of us that we see a situation that doesn't look as safe as we would want it to look. And I think once we've seen that, we all feel obligated, really, to move forward as promptly as we can to address the situation. And I'm totally comfortable with the no parking on both sides of the street. However, I think we only have the one chance to make a first impression when we move these people off of Spring Street and into the parking lot. And I guess the part of this equation that I just have some reservations about is, you know, can we make the improvements in the parking lot area in time so that when these people move off Spring Street and get their first impression, that it's a functioning, efficient impression, and they go there the way we want them to go there, so that they don't end up finding some other solution somewhere else that negates what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if Lieutenant Miller can speak to it, but I know the chief and the department was making rounds weeks ago, reminding folks of where you can park and where you can't park, and the move to the Colony parking lot. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the streets here, the parking lot is 25 yards away. I mean, it's a brand new parking lot. I mean, I think, you know, there's certain areas where you're connecting the parking lot to the one tennis court parking lot that's gravel. Improvements need to be made, but you got a brand new parking lot over there. This is I can appreciate we are going to make efforts to improve certain areas, but I don't know if you're suggesting holding off the ordinance or not, but I mean,
I think I have reservations about holding off the ordinance because I think of the safety issues. But maybe if because of the winter weather and things that we end up looking at the parking lot and saying, you know what, we can't make the ultimate improvements that we want to make these next 2 or 3 weeks, that we can publicize it somehow, that here's our engineering drawing of what we want it to look like come summer, when we can do it when it's not a busy place and we can actually do the work we want to do. So I don't know if we can work in that kind of a direction, Tom, that we can move forward promptly on what we want to do to improve it.
We're going to move forward promptly to address deficiencies as best we can. That's what I said earlier. I'll repeat that. Rich and I will go out there together tomorrow, figure out a plan for making it an easier in and out for people. But frankly, you know, I wasn't going to do this, but I've got to throw in my 2 cents because it's just in my nature. I had 3 children go through Southern Boulevard School. 2 of them went from kindergarten through 3rd grade. 1 started there in 2nd grade when we arrived here in 2000. So for a number of years, we dealt with dropping off and picking up at Southern Boulevard School because we didn't live quite far enough away to qualify for busing. We were 1.9 miles and you had to be 2 miles. So for those years, every day, my wife got up and drove the kids to school. And she didn't park anywhere. She got in the line that is there and designed for the purpose of being a drop-off. And it moved very smoothly. Parents, one after another, or guardians, whoever, nannies, whoever was driving the kids, would pull up to the back door, the kids would get out, and you'd leave. And you repeated that process when school let out in the afternoon. And if you were anxious to go somewhere, you got there early. And my wife was usually the first one in line because she was just anxious to see the kids. And there was never a problem. There were a number of times that I picked them up because she was busy with something else. And we never had a problem, ever. Kids weren't running up between cars. There were parents or there were teachers that were out there at the door that were greeting the children as they got out of the car. They were there releasing them to a parent to get in the car and to leave. And it worked like a charm, and I believe that that still works. It's only people who are not availing themselves of that opportunity to get in that line that are using the other areas, to park on Spring Street, to mill around and socialize, or for whatever reason they're choosing not to get in that line. But I'm going to offer my opinion that for parents that are truly worried about their children's safety, and particularly children of this age, kindergarten through 3rd grade, drive them to school, get in that line, particularly in inclement weather. The day after a 28-inch snowstorm, people are worried about their 6-year-old walking to school. That's ludicrous. Drive them to school, get in the line, and drop them off at the back door.
Thank you, Tom. Do I have a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
And Mayor Ritter.
Yes. All right, we have the introduction of 2 different ordinances.
We still have
07 is
2016-07.
replacing.
Oh, we're doing 07 here?
Do you need it?
I got it. I thought we just did 07. 06, okay. 07, ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Section 7-14 of the revised general ordinances of the Township titled Parking Prohibited During Certain Hours on Certain Streets on Spring Street. We'll open it up for a hearing of citizens. Any discussion from the committee? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Moving on, introduction of 2 ordinances tonight. The first is a salary ordinance. It's ordinance 2016-08, an ordinance to provide minimum and maximum ranges for compensation for certain positions of employment in the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, New Jersey, effective January 1, 2016. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Have a motion to approve?
Motion to introduce.
Into
A motion to
introduce.
introduce, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
Public hearing on February 25th.
The second ordinance we're introducing tonight, ordinance 2016-09, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, establishing pool membership fees for Colony Recreational Center, commencing 2016. Is there any discussion on this?
What are they in relation to last year, the same?
No, this is an increase over last year. We had a meeting earlier this week with the Colony Pool Advisory Committee, who unanimously endorsed the increases. You'll recall that last year we actually reduced the fees. Basically, Bob, it's about a 10 to 12% increase across the board. So the first category of Chatham Township resident family went from 400 to 450, and then proportionate increases in the other categories.
Okay, and the reason for the thought process behind the increases?
The increases to help further defray our losses in the colony pool operation.
And help support social activities and do improvements to the club itself.
Right.
Tom, do you know how these rates compare with the rates 2 years ago before we brought them down?
I believe 2 years ago the family rate was 500. Might have even, yeah, I think it was around 500. Might have even been 550. I don't know. I'll look that up and let you know tomorrow.
Compared to this one, which would be 450.
Yes, it'll still be below that.
And this is substantially below, I think, a lot of the other community pools in the area.
Yes.
I have a question, and I don't know if it's appropriate since this is directed at the rates, but we had talked about the age considered to be an individual as 12 years old, or is this not the time to discuss that?
No, I think it is, because there is an inconsistency, as you pointed out when we met this morning.
That
I
a
think we're
non-resident
I think we're
individual
showing
is
resident
14 years
individuals
old.
12 and
Right.
non-resident.
I guess our
That's
township children will
14.
mature at
Our
12.
township
yeah,
children
yeah.
are mature.
But I think my recommendation is that we should be consistent at 14. I
Okay.
think the idea was that we don't want unaccompanied children who haven't at least finished 8th grade and started high school. So I think 14 is the right number.
Everyone agree with that?
I don't remember what it was. Was this a revision?
I don't remember either.
I think it was 14. I think mine was 14.
I think, yeah, but I think the mistake was made last year.
I see.
So,
Okay.
because the only thing I changed this year were the fees. I
Yeah.
didn't look, so I missed that. I didn't even
Right.
notice it until you pointed it
Yeah,
out.
and being at a pool, at a recreational facility, especially one with water and water safety, et cetera, at the age of 12, not accompanied by an adult, I think is maybe a little imprudent.
I think
So-
last year, we actually only had like 8 individual memberships, and I don't even know if we looked into to figure out how many of them actually were minors.
Right, because the parents are not joining.
Yeah.
Right. All right, so that will change to,
14 across
Yeah,
the board.
I'll update that before we publish,
that's my suggestion.
Yes.
if that's what the committee wants, then we'll make that change.
So there's consensus to move it to 14.
Yes.
Correct. Is there any further discussion on this ordinance? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
Public hearing on February 25th.
Thank you, Greg. Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on those items? Is there a motion to approve?
Would you like me to read the list?
Sure.
It's Resolution 2016-047, authorizing the sale of surplus equipment and property. Resolution 2016-054, payment of bills. 2016-055, approving meeting minutes. 2016-056, approving executive session minutes. 2016-57, releasing escrow balances. 2016-58, award of Wickham Woods paving contract to Tilcon. 2016-059, award of contract to General Foundries for steel casings. 2016-60, authorizing submission of the state recycling tonnage grant. And 2016-061, appointing members to the Open Space Committee.
Great, thank you. And Mike, I don't know if you want to touch on the sale of surplus. You know, you did it last week. Just remind folks, there's a lot of great property for sale.
If they want a used police car, this is the place to get it. Yes,
Snow
there'll be
blower.
an online sale for some, not just vehicles of our police and Department of Public Works, but also some equipment, mowers and such, that will be all advertised online and auctioned online. So,
At govdeals.com.
yes, thank you. As soon as they're posted, look them up on govdeals.com.
There you go.
I spoke with Mr. Young earlier. He's going to get me the dates of the auction for the legal ad once we know when that's going to take place.
Okay. Do it all online.
And just as a point of information, I'm also going to offer the 2 volunteer fire departments and the Board of Ed an opportunity to see if there's anything here that they want.
Oh, great.
Because we can do a direct deal with them.
Great idea.
So how is it determined? Like each year, do you survey the departments to find out what's excess, or how does that work?
You know, Bob, we've been kind of remiss in not doing an auction for a while. That's why you see so many police cars on here. We typically purchase 2 new police cars per year, and we should be rotating them out of service. They pass them down to use as unmarked cars in the Detective Bureau and that sort of thing, or to cannibalize them for parts for others. But ideally, we should probably do an auction at least every 2 years, and it's probably been 5 or 6 since we've done one.
I think 2008 was the last auction we had.
So,
Been a while.
8 years.
Good deal. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Moving on, any discussion items? Nothing on the agenda here, but anything else anyone wants to talk about? All right, we'll open up for hearing of citizens again. And want to come forward to speak? All right, hearing nothing else, there's no executive session tonight, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for joining us.